To draw and paint light is to confront the reality of what it is to be alive. The challenge is try to see beyond appearances and get to the essence of whatever it is.
Many painters are marvellous to look at. They uplift your spirits. But Rachel has this special quality which is only in very few painters, which is stillness.
The joy is in actually spending time communing with the painting for long enough to actually feel like you're really doing it. and I love those times.
She's after some kind of innate order to everything, and that innate order is essential to her. I think it's the thing that gives her life meaning, quite apart from her art. It can only be arrived at if you spend time at it, and that's really her practice.
I'm usually drawn to what's around the environment. I feel that's a great place to start because it's something you get to know really well.
She moved from Newtown in Sydney about 15 years ago to go to Bathurst, and she knew a little bit about Bathurst, and her family lived beyond Bathurst in Forbes, and she found a house to live in. And it's a lovely little cottage, and it has this wonderful clutter of a person at work. But the house is very Bathurst. Bathurst is a beautiful country town. It's pretty well unspoilt, and yet it's very lively. It's not a dead town. It's full of there's a very good spirit there of the people that live there. And I think they've embraced Rachel.
I love the fact that it had character, that the buildings gave it character, and I also love to be able to see the landscape. I love the tree-lined streets around here, particularly the huge elm trees and plane trees, and the way the shapes make way for the power lines. And some of the trees are so full and verdant, it just begs for a response.
So she's wandered Bathurst up and down the street, makes pictures in the house, out in the garden, over the fence, on the street, and then she spreads her wings a little bit. And it's almost as if when you leave the house and you walk around Bathurst, you're living in her world.
It's not really the heritage, while I love the heritage buildings, but it's really that buildings of any kind, even a 1960s building I can think of from Keppel Street. I've often eyed that off. I'd love to do something because it's so simple. It's actually about light. It's a great vehicle for painting light. And the gasworks. I find that an incredibly beautiful building. It's so simple and geometric.
She's someone who's painting for 30 years, you can almost say. And in that time, she's sorted herself out. She knows what to do. It's become instinct, really. And so the process is more about finding order. And for her, it's a huge struggle. But of course, to us who look at her work, we can't see any of that struggle. What we see is a kind of calm, a certainty, and that order that she's seeking is always there. And for her, it's a form of a religious experience. For us, it is probably a sense of universality which is in her work, and that's really why I like it.
There are pitfalls with painting, and I might pursue a painting with enthusiasm, and there's always a moment early on in a painting. It's full of promise, and it becomes really difficult though when you reach a certain point and you need to be willing to take risks and sacrifice areas you don't like in the painting. This painting I began, I can't remember which year, for about 3 or 4 years ago. And I've just left this until I actually knew how to resolve the painting, because I actually spend a lot of time contemplating the composition and looking at the possibilities, to create better balance. I painted the sky at the time, and now, look, I don't like the sheen to the paint, and at the moment I think I want to scrape it back to get back to the suggestion of the weave of the linen and paint the picture in one skin. And at the moment it's not unified. The sky sort of sticks out like a sore thumb to me. I'm using the heat gun so that I can warm the paint to be able to scrape it off. While I do look for structure and order in a picture, it's not to say that I'm not really taken by discordant looking arrangements of shapes and forms. And sometimes it could be the most uninspiring subject in itself catches my eye, but it's the light that transforms what we see. And I love that about the light. It can do that. Light has the power to form and to dissolve, and in this we see the power of the Creator. I just really value that observation because it makes me look at light with reverence, I think, because as a Christian I'm very aware that Christ said, "I am the light of the world." And so the sunlight to me is a symbol of its Creator.
Here is a very serious mind that is pursuing something further than most would do it. Art is not a decorative object for her. It is a pursuit for truth. And that truth may for her be religious, but it's exactly the same truth for all of us. You know, we live on the world, we've got to find out why we're here, what it's all about. She has found a real truth, and it's in her work, and it's probably in the way she's committed herself to her work.
When I saw the tree outside this terrace house in Bentinck Street, it sort of arches heavenward to make way for another power line. And I just thought, wow, that is just full of joy. And I thought this picture needs to be just about this tree singing for joy.
And it's called Bentinck Psalm. And in Bentinck Street is a marvellous big two-storey terrace and a great big elm. And the elm was in autumn, the leaves were falling off, it was going yellow and brown, and when there's a wind it blew the leaves into the sky. Well, there's the most perfect poetic subject which would escape most people. And here's Rachel giving it this marvellous order. The building is there, the tree is there. And for me I thought, now there is a picture.
There's actually a psalm that came to mind, and it's Psalm 96, and at the end of the psalm it says, "Let the fields be jubilant and everything in them. Then all the trees of the forest will sing for joy before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples in his truth."
It's also John Keats. It's his great poem Autumn. It's got exactly the same sensation. So for all of us, it doesn't matter whether we care about what Rachel's views are about religion. It's an ode to life, to nature. And for me, it's one of her great pictures. I think it's one of her masterpieces. I call her the inheritor of Lloyd Rees because the connection between drawing and painting is so strong. And because in Lloyd Rees also there is a strong transcendental, a spiritual quality in the work. And that's both in the drawings and in the paintings. The gentleness of her touch and the authority of it as well is exactly the same as you see in Lloyd Rees.
I think more and more these days I look for structure and stability, and possibly because in a world that's so uncertain, it might be my way of wanting to reassure the viewer that there is an underlying order and structure to the reality beyond what we see in front of us. I want to waste no time in painting pictures that attempt to point to the light, the source of our creation, and that which has the power to form and to dissolve.